down there again. I've already voted.
You'd like it down there too, man?
Yeah. A month or two in the winter.
Okay, guys.
It's 2 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Thanks everyone for being here. Appreciate your time and attendance. We'll start out by any additions to the agenda that you have in front of you. Okay, assuming that's a no. Approval of the previous meeting minutes. Can we get approval for the minutes from the May meeting?
So approved.
Okay. Second. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Board member comments. I want to welcome Jeff to the Jeff Hendren, who's a new liaison, new member of the POA board. Jeff, welcome. Thanks for sitting in. Any of you guys have any comments or anything?
Not this time. Too early.
All right. Thank you very much. Tom, do you have any comments?
Yeah, just a couple things. I sent out a staff report to the committee for to Matt earlier in the month, and it shows the registrations of boats by non-motorized and motorized. Since 2016, the number of non-motorized, those would be kayaks, supboards, canoes. We've gone from 2,600 to 5,700, 122% increase over that period. And then from 2016 to 22 on motorized, we went from 1,650 to 1,737, so a 17% increase. So we're seeing a steady increase in both. The kayaks more so, but both are growing. Overall, we've gone from 4,239 to 7,678. So when you combine motorized and non-motorized, so ongoing growth. The other thing is, and this is covered later on in the agenda, but I'll just throw it in here. It's that time of year again when we ask the committee to provide management with recommendations for the budget. And keep in mind, it doesn't have to be just capital items. It can be operational. We want to have more like lake rangers or something to that nature, which would impact the operating budget, something of that nature. So if you and we do ask the committee to force rank those, what's most important down to what's least important, and those recommendations are due back by August 31st.
U.S. folks that was our last meeting, is our vote count for that?
You're sure open to make a suggestion?
No, I didn't. I just wondered if
You sure open to make suggestions if you have something that you want to mention? Yes. I mean, we probably won't vote on it today. I don't think we'll finalize the list for a couple of months, but if you have anything to contribute, we certainly would listen to whatever you have to say.
Absolutely. And that's all I had to cover.
Thanks, Tom. Any questions for Tom before we move on? Harold?
Activity cards, are they up this year over last year?
Yeah, so since 2019, in 19 we had 10,000 activity cards. In 22 we issued 17,000. So we went from 10,000 to 17,000. And this year we're on pace to break 18,000.
Great.
The majority of the growth has been in dependents, so kids. So a lot of kids using the pools, the beach, and so forth. But we've seen a steady increase in activity card usage or purchases.
Do you have any new stats on ranger interventions or discussion?
Rick will cover that in his, but we are, it's that time of year when it starts warming up and we start having more and more interactions with the membership. So yeah, Rick will cover that in his report. Anything else?
Thank you, guys. Rick, I think you're up next.
Okay, so in a previous meeting, we talked about and voted on a drawdown for Lake Windsor beginning this fall. And usually it is in the first week or two of November going through the first part of March. Since then, we've been asked by the city of Bella Vista to go a little earlier to help them accommodate the fix of a culvert at Chelsea near Pontoon Park. So I believe they're here today to speak to that. In addition, I wanted to review some of the reasons why we are lowering Lake Windsor. We've got a gravel bar at London Landing, and that's something that requires ongoing maintenance. And it will be, it's getting ripe now, but it will definitely be ripe for removal by the time of the drawdown. And it will also let us to reach out a little bit further into the lake than we normally would. So we've got that maintenance issue. Also, a previous fix for the London boat ramp didn't hold like we expected. So we're going to go back in and fix that, which also requires the lake to be down. There's a pretty sizable dredging project that has already been submitted, and I've approved it for the cove. As you're going into the large cove there at Snake Island or Goose Island or whatever you want to call it, as you go back and it splits into a right-hand small cove and a left-hand. This is on the left-hand side, the very back of that. I've got a resident that's looking to dredge that area. That'll be a pretty sizable job. Also, I've had about 12 to 15 inquiries about the drawdown from people looking to do dock and seawall improvements and construction, that kind of thing. Haven't received very many of those formal requests through a permit application, but remember, we are early in the process for that, so I expect those over the next couple months. Getting to what Grace asked about the Rangers, yes, we are seeing steady increases in the amount of contacts as we go into this year and also year over year. For the month of May, we had 5,711 contacts, 735 folks removed who didn't have credentials for being here, 633 contacts by boat, and 88 hours on the water in May. Compared to April, we were just over 3,000 contacts, and for May of 2022, we were at 5,527, so almost 200 more this year than last year for the month of May. We do expect to spend more time out on the water as the summer goes on. We'd like to get those hours up. The Rangers are still finding quite a few boats without current POA registration. Many times it's the first time somebody's been out on the water for the year, and we tend to get a lot of those. And so we just give them a friendly reminder to get that taken care of, or to get it displayed on their boat if they've already done so. And some good news is our rowdy teenage groups that often appear on the various lakes have not been as big of a problem this year as they have been in the past. And I attribute that to our consistent patrols, and I think the word's getting out. They've found other places to go, but we're happy about that. In grounds maintenance, we continue to replace boards at various public docks. This is the time of the year where they tend to show themselves as going bad, and so we continue to make the rounds making those repairs. No-wake buoys have been removed from the small no-wake lakes. We feel like that the sign at the boat ramp is good enough. Until we know otherwise, we'll continue with that. And that's from the perspective of just trying to cut down on the amount of clutter. Signs and buoys are not the prettiest things, and when we don't need them, we like to remove them. Our staff, we've kind of been kind of taxed this summer. We've had some issues at our gun range and trying to staff it, and so we've pulled from grounds maintenance in order to make that happen. Well, earlier this week we backfilled a grounds maintenance position, and today I just hired another lake ranger that brings us to 10 for the summer, and so that should make us fully staffed. In addition, our rangers attended a de-escalation class last month, which will help them be better prepared for interactions with people that may not be going pleasantly. That'll help out there. Our lakes ecology folks have been fertilizing the lakes. That started last week. We'll continue this week. We were out of fertilizer at the end of last week, but we're getting a new shipment tomorrow. Chris Fuller held 2 knot tying classes for employees, which kind of will help our jobs be a little bit easier. The 3 aquaculture ponds are complete except for some dressing up with sowing grass seed and that kind of thing. But we've got catfish in one and bluegill in the other, and I'm looking to put catfish in the third. I'm currently collecting catfish eggs for spawning, and our kids fishing derby was attended by roughly 70 kids in the middle of last month. Most of the fish that were caught were last year's fish, so they were much bigger than were expected. Sometimes newly stocked fish, they don't want to bite right away, and I think that's what we were up against, but luckily we've been doing it for a number of years in the same location, and there were still plenty of last year's fish to catch. And as always, we want to thank the Fly Tires for helping staff that event and making it a seamless event. So that's it.
Question, Rick, once we fertilize lakes, how long does that usually take to have an effect on the water quality?
Generally 5 to 10 days. Usually you're seeing something within 5 days, but it may not take its full effect for 10 days or 2 weeks.
And the rains that we've had, like today, is that helpful or?
Well, it can be helpful in it's washing in nutrients from the shoreline. If it's a really big rain event, it could dilute what we did and flush things out. But what we've had over the last week to 2 weeks shouldn't really affect things either way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What's the start date on Windsor, the drawdown?
Well, that's what we're going to discuss today.
Oh, okay. So that
Go ahead,
hasn't
yeah.
been finalized?
So we have Karen Hunt and Darren, I didn't get your last name. And they are from the city, our streets department. Rick had referenced this earlier. They're looking to repair the culvert at Chelsea by Pontoon Park. They're asking if we can lower the lake 2 weeks earlier than normal. What their concern is in doing all the work, we got to get it done before the asphalt plants close, which happens during the wintertime. And so we don't want to be in a situation where they're halfway done with the work and then we get a early cold spell and they can't complete the work. So if I have done an injustice at all to
no, that's pretty much it. We're just looking.
If you could come up to the microphone so the people that are at home can hear you.
We're looking for some sort of a more exact commitment timeline so we can try to plan that with our paving contractor that we have for this year's resurfacing events. We would like to complete the project to a finished state. If we have to, we will have to end up doing some sort of a temporary roadway repair, and we would not want to deal with that during winter weather events. Right. Whatever we may get and the amount of our plows running through there. And with the detour being through Judy, that wouldn't be favorable in any kind of icy situation as well. Right. So we're just trying to, we've already purchased the pipe. We're pretty much ready on our end. We just would like to tie down a timeline and see if we can get it all to fit.
Rick, what was the original date?
The original date was November the 6th, and the discussion centered around trying to go 2 weeks early, from what I understand.
So you back it up to October 23rd?
Yes.
And with that, we just wanted to learn from the committee, you know, all the reasonings for the drawdown and the timelines on such, and if there was any availability to even go beyond that 2 weeks sooner or not.
Now, Rick, you had commented that, so
Yeah.
you have a little balancing act here, and if you go even further, we could potentially get into fishing season still?
Yeah, so October can be a great month for fishing, and even early October in some years is still warm enough for being in the water. We generally do the early November. The sportsman type kind of put their fishing rods down and pick up their guns at that time, and surely by the end of October the water's too cold for swimming. But we felt like that we did have 2 weeks of ability to go earlier without impeding the fun of too many people.
Right.
And so now I will say that so the process is we don't just snap our finger and the lake is down 4 feet.
Right.
It is a process that takes about 3 weeks to a month, depending on whether we get any rain or not. And so we're shooting for 3 inches a day. Our regulations don't let us go any quicker than that. So even when we start mid to late October, it's going to be Thanksgiving before it's down.
Right. So. And that's what we're facing, and we understand from our side the pleasures of the lakes and potentially affecting people, but this road closure is affecting our citizens just as well. So we're wondering from the Lake Committee if there is some sort of outreach with the citizens and say, you know, there is somewhat of this compromise going on this year. Lake activities for Windsor may come to an end sooner.
So if we went 1 week earlier, which would be October 16th, and like you said, it would go down 3 or 4 inches a day, so those who fish would not necessarily lose that additional week.
And I will say this, even when the lake is down 4 feet, the ramp is still usable. It's not necessarily easy, but the ramp is generally still usable. But for the folks that have boats moored at their residence, it becomes, you know, those folks likely won't be able to use their boats. So,
so if we went 1 week earlier to the 16th, would that alleviate your concerns?
I mean, any
then that would be 3 weeks early.
Time would help, but like you said, the amount of time it takes to get to that point, we're pretty much looking like we're going to need it to be at that 4 foot mark, because this particular culvert is where the lagoon section is on the west side, draining into that little draw there of the lake.
So the job does require the full 4 feet.
Pretty much, because we're going to have to get that lagoon side down as well, and that whole pipe, the reason for the failure is that has always equalized and never really drained one way or the other, and it has rotted out that pipe, and we don't know the full extent of the void under the road. We just know at this point it's large, but until we open it up, we're not exactly sure what it's going to take to restructure that roadway.
So is the intention for the culvert to completely drain the west side? When you're
No,
finished?
it will go back to the same grades and function in the same manner, except we will be replacing a metal culvert with a concrete culvert to eliminate that erosion factor. So it will still function the same. It's just a matter of getting in and doing it, and the entire bottom half of that pipe has rotted away, and we don't really know the full extent of what we're getting into until we open it up. So any extra amount of time we can get is beneficial for the project as well as the citizens as a whole.
He's got a really good point.
Chelsea's closed until this is complete?
That portion.
Well, that section.
There's a temporary detour between
Yeah,
Highlands and
I've
Judy
done it.
up and around, and it will stay that way because we can't guarantee the safety of the roadway under that pipe.
So just in case anybody asking, for my own curiosity, can you not remove that culvert with a little bit of water down in the bottom of it? Or, I know it would be easier if it was totally
We're
drained.
fully anticipating there to be some water down there.
Okay.
And we'll probably have to put down a rock bed leach field
Okay,
to then build on top of that with our pipe and then our roadway.
okay, you don't know, again, you don't know what's below there because
We
it's been.
don't know the extent of the void.
Okay. So, Rick, are you comfortable going back to the 16th, or, I mean, I feel totally comfortable with the 23rd. 16th does kind of cut into fishing time, but
Well, that's,
to
I
your
mean,
point,
that's for the committee to discuss.
So, anybody have thoughts?
My one question was, if we move this up, are we gonna do the same on the other end with the cutoff date in March? Are we gonna, you gonna close it up 3 weeks earlier if we move the start up 3 weeks earlier?
We wouldn't have to. Again, that's, that would be for the committee to decide. There's no harm or benefit either way, as long as we're, as long as we're early to mid-March. Windsor does fill up pretty quick once we cut the valve off, so I'm not concerned, as I am with some of the other lakes, about getting it to refill.
Okay. Comments, questions, concerns from any other?
Well, my opinion, if it's a required repair, that's very beneficial, not, to the community, and it's very much needed, that we may just have to make a sacrifice for this 1 year, this one drawdown, to accommodate this.
We have, since the closure, fielded many calls and complaints, and we tried to inform all the citizens to the complete process of this, and it's just a lot of negativity with them feeling like we're dragging our heels and getting this repair done. And we know it's not, you guys know it's not, but
Sure, it doesn't help with the bridges, how long those are taking to get done. I'm sure you
darn
take
it.
heed on that too. The POA and the city have a great working relationship, and it's a give and take. And I would encourage the committee to help out the city, because one of these times we might be on the other side. We're asking them to help us out on something. So
To me, it's reasonable.
we're just looking for the best result overall for the citizens. And we feel on our part it's a give and take with the citizens.
So, would anyone like to make a motion that we begin to draw down on October the 16th, I think is the date?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, all in favor? Any opposed?
you
Okay,
got your answer.
all right.
Thank you very much.
So, Rick, I would probably try to get it back up to full level maybe a week or two earlier if we could on the back end, just to balance things out.
Before we take a vote on the date that'll come back up.
Okay.
I do think it's a good message to the membership where we're shifting the date earlier, but we're gonna open up earlier. I understand that it's not necessarily ideal fishing time to go earlier, but I think it does say that, hey, we're closing early, but we're gonna open early. I think that's a good message.
Shows them we recognize what's going on, so.
Yeah, so I think so too.
Because
So,
it's not just the fishing, it's the view and so forth, right?
right. So when do we normally?
So this is scheduled for March 6th. Whatever we do, I like to do it on a Monday because it gives us all week to observe.
So it's scheduled to close the valve on March the 6th.
I believe March the 6th is a
So if we
Monday.
push that back to February 19th, that would give you about 2.5 weeks. Is that possible? Or is that workable in your opinion?
The other issue is we always get people who can't find a contractor, and they are always asking us to push it ahead anyway.
Yeah, so we've had to delay closing the valve in the past because of that, right? And we've compromised a little bit.
Yeah, if we have a bad storm, that just raises the lake and we gotta reel over the whole thing again, we'll usually try and extend it. But I think the initial message of closing earlier but opening up earlier, I think that's a good message.
So you think February 19th is okay? Is that-
Am I looking, is February the 18th a Monday?
I think it's the 19th.
19th is a Monday.
According to my calendar, it's the 19th.
Okay. Sure,
Okay.
that works.
All right, so can we have a motion to start refilling Lake Windsor on February 19th as opposed to March the 6th? Okay, second, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Both motions carry. So,
Thank you very much.
all right.
Rick, does this mean you get more flack? I mean, will this really present a lot of problems?
Not, I mean, not too much. I think people understand, and, yes.
When you tell people that it's gonna get Chelsea back open, I mean, it's not just some resident or some individual, we're getting a street back open. It's currently closed in a rather lengthy detour.
It is closed right now?
It's closed and it
Oh, wow.
has
Yeah,
been.
you can't go across it at
Oh,
all.
wow, okay.
What he said is that they don't know how bad it is, so they don't want a car going over it and it's just collapsing underneath the car.
And the detour is quite lengthy.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're gonna need to make sure that we get it in the newsletter, and I think we include the message as to why,
Right.
because that's an important message.
Because I'm sure there's people just as anxious to get that street back open as they care about
On the
lake.
positive side, this is the year Windsor was chosen. If we'd chosen another lake, then you'd be dealing with two going down, so.
Very good point. Yeah. I like that on that.
Kind of worked out that way.
And another question for Rick, going back to fertilization of the lakes. Now, you fertilize primarily for the benefit of the fish, or does this also help the habitat?
It helps reduce the amount of vegetation as well, because it shades the bottom of the lake and prevents vegetation from growing. So actually by fertilizing, you're inhibiting vegetation. Doesn't seem to make sense, but it's true.
Well, is that a plus?
It's a plus for those who like to recreate. It can be a minus for fish habitat, but the other side of that is that the plankton that's created by the fertilization feeds the small fish too.
So the fertilization actually makes the water more clear?
No.
It does not?
No.
Okay.
It clouds
Clouds
it,
it.
but it's the cloudy water that prevents the sunlight from hitting the bottom of the lake, which would then encourage plant growth.
Any other questions for Rick on anything?
Oh, I have one more question, Rick. Regarding the redundancy on the buoys, is there any plan to, like on Loman, there's multiple no-wake buoys inside the no-wake buoy?
So
It can create
that-
confusion. We talked about that. I don't
We
recall.
did.
what
I purposely didn't put it on the agenda. We're doing some background work. I've talked to Rick, and we've got some things kind of that we're researching, and so we wanted to be better prepared before we came to the committee with any further suggestions. But it is going to be on the agenda probably next month. But it's still out there.
And keep in mind, any changes to the buoy system wouldn't go into effect till January, so we'd rather them take extra time, making a better informed decision, because it's not gonna change the start date, it's still gonna be January 1.
Okay, any other questions for Rick before we move on to next topics? Okay, so I want to thank again Errol Wasson, Grace Turley, and Paul Bickford This is your last meeting for this particular term on the Lakes Committee. We want to thank all of you for your contributions to the committee, and we're going to miss you. And so feel free to stop by and visit anytime you like. You're always welcome. And we want to, well, we already said we welcome Jeff Hendren as a new POA board member. So Jeff sits on the POA board. He'll be one of our liaisons sitting on the Lakes Committee meeting. So now we have 3. So that's a good thing. We talked about the city of Bella Vista. The next thing I want to say is we do have to elect officers, and we'll have 3 new committee members next month, but we'll have to do that. So to keep that in mind, if anybody wants to, you know, Errol was co-chair or vice chair, so that position is definitely open. So if anybody is interested in any of the positions really, but particularly that one since he's leaving, I'd like to hear from you. Rick talked about, or Tom talked about the 2024 budget priorities. So I sent out in an email the other day just a list of what we had done last year. So since we have a few minutes, I'd like to kind of go through. I think the number 1 on there probably would stay number 1, the Lake Ann sinkhole and spillway. So we fixed the sinkhole, but the spillway still needs to be done, correct?
That is correct. The engineers haven't submitted a final plan yet, to my knowledge.
Would that be in the 2024 budget, or would that be in the 2025 budget?
Good question.
I guess we can still leave it as a top.
We don't know yet.
Yeah.
We leave it as a top priority either way, probably,
Yeah.
right?
And it may be a big enough budget item that it's in 2 years.
Yeah. Okay, the road on Lake Windsor, have we repaved that yet?
No, we had 2 options for this year, and the option that was chosen was the smaller project of Norwood.
Right.
And so Windsor is still out there, still needs to be done.
Okay, so I would think the top 2 items would still be there. The third item we could probably take off, so we've got a total of 4 stock ponds now, correct?
We have 3.
We have 3?
And there's room for 1 more.
Okay, would you like to see 1 more?
I would like to see 1 more.
All right, so we've changed that to add 1. Mineral enhancement, want to keep that on there. Boundaries, water skiing, we're going to talk some more about the buoys and that sort of thing. Trout stocking, fish stocking, part-time internships, college students. The rest of those are more general. Have we moved the kiosk on Lake Avalon closer to the boat dock?
We have not.
All right.
We need to get
No,
that
I think
done.
that was one of Carol's things that she
Yeah.
brought up last year, so we'll definitely leave that one on there. Might even move that one up, Carol. Maybe we can get it done this year. Anything else, and we don't, this isn't gonna be finalized for a couple of months, but anything else that you guys can think of that might be on, that we need to add as you, go ahead, Errol.
From my perception on Lake Windsor, boat activities increased. I mean, year after year, and this year seems to be even a little more than last year. Do you think you need more rangers during the summertime when the boating and fishing activity is stronger? Is that something that should be in the budget?
I think we're at a pretty good level now. We've had a little bit of difficulty bringing folks on and keeping them on this spring. We would have hoped to have had everyone in place 2 months ago, and I just made a hire this morning, or made an offer this morning. We tend to have folks find other work, and so specifically this year, that job requisition's been open all year. I mean, could we use another ranger or 2? Yes, but at some point it becomes a logistical issue in not having trucks for them to work out of.
Or boats.
Or boats. Not to say that they couldn't work in teams and get dropped off at a boat and that kind of thing. But again, we can't have just like you can't have a police officer on every corner controlling speed. we can't have a ranger everywhere either. Generally, when we get a call, we respond in good time, and I think that's really all that can be expected.
Okay, just, if you needed them, it should be in the budget, but if you're comfortable with what you have, then
Yes.
that's great.
Yeah, we should be good.
So I have one more question, just based on the size of the residents who have shown up at this meeting. I'm assuming Memorial Day went very well this year in terms of patrolling incidents.
It went well.
Okay.
There were issues like there always are.
Uh-huh.
One area where, so a number of years ago, we changed the name of the Rangers from Lake Rangers to POA Rangers. And there are going to be special events that may require the Rangers to participate in areas where they hasn't historically been their purview. But we feel like as long as we know in advance what's going on, we can provide the coverage to take care of that.
Okay.
The Rangers you mentioned you hired and then you lost them, do you think that's more like a pay issue, or they want full-time work versus?
There's all the above. Generally, our Rangers don't take the job because they need the pay, which is a great position to be in.
Right.
But they do want to work part-time. It's a job that keeps them active, and so from that perspective, part-time it works well for them and for us. Does that get at your question?
I think so.
Okay.
I have one more. If money were no object, or if there was something that we could do speaking from a fisherman's perspective, to get some vegetation back in some of the lakes, is there something that we could do that we could put in a budget that might help make that happen a little quicker? And I know there's a balance there.
I've been a part of some replanting efforts that tend to not work. We can make an effort to round up some of the grass carp that we have out there. If given enough time, they're gonna fall by the wayside, as they get older anyway. But sure, we could go out electrofishing and actively remove some. And we could use volunteer help to do that as well.
I mean, does that?
We feel like we've gotten rid of the parrot feather that's on Loch Lomond, I hope, which was the reason that we got really aggressive with the carp to begin with. But then when we, just to know that when we accomplish that and vegetation comes back, then we're going to be back into the game of spraying vegetation around docks and such. And so that's going to increase the cost in that area, which is part of doing business. But
And I realize all this is a compromise. I just hear from a lot of fishing people that the lakes aren't managed the way they used to be, and there's no grass, and people complain a lot about that. And I would say the fishing is, do I like to fish in grass? Absolutely. There are other ways to fish if there's no grass, obviously. You have to find ways around that. But, and again, it's a compromise. Everything you said is a compromise, because if you do one thing, then you're affecting it. So if you have any thoughts about that moving forward,
we do allow bow fishing. We don't necessarily encourage it, but for those that want to bow fish for grass carp, it is legal.
And then the other thing that I think we kind of talked about throughout I don't know if it was this year or last year, but based on the stocking surveys, we're overpopulated with small bass in all but one lake. And anything that we could do to encourage taking some more bass and some more smaller bass, particularly.
Word of mouth. We can put an article in the Sporting Update.
That might be a really good idea.
Which we need to do every now and then anyway.
Yeah. So how about parks, ramps, docks, anything that anybody can think of that needs repair or replacement or additions or kayak racks? I'm just throwing it out there. Just to,
I have a question. Do
Uh-huh.
we have any kind of authority for people who allow their docks to just deteriorate beyond a reasonable amount? You know, they're just falling apart, the styrofoam foam around them, and
We currently don't. I mean, we've contacted folks and asked, but
Yeah,
beyond
that's all-
asking, I
that's all
don't
you
know.
can do. That's what I thought.
Unfortunately, our declaration specifically does not allow us to fine anybody. So that would be the most effective way, and I think that's what Hot Springs Village does, is they're able to go to, you know, someone that's has a dock in disrepair and fine them. We specifically are not allowed to, and that document is near impossible to change. So it really makes it much harder for us to be able to enforce. We can contact the city if it becomes a hazard, you know, if they have, you know, if it's gonna fall down or something of that nature, or if they have electrical that's close to the water or so forth. With all that being said, there's not a lot of teeth to that either.
With the increase in kayaks and canoes and paddle boards, could you rent more if you had more racks in the different areas?
Yes, we could. I would really like to be able to put a rack on at Lake Rayburn, but there's really not a place to do that. That's the only lake that doesn't, to my knowledge, it's the only lake that doesn't have a rack.
Do you need stuff in the budget to add more racks?
A
where
rack
there is room?
A rack used to be about $1,000 for 10 spaces. I think it's
2?
maybe 1,500 anyway. But we can still make that back pretty quickly at $60 a space.
could you put one at the end of the road, but not where the ramp is, but at the end of the road where people turn around, would there be one room for one?
Possibly, but it wouldn't be that close to. It wouldn't be easy access to the water.
True.
What about the area, you know, where we did the draining of the lake, you know, they set up the pipes and all? There is a nice flat plane there, you have to come
Well,
down.
that's the spillway.
Yeah, the spillway, that's
And
what
we
I
can't
Can't do that.
be in the spillway. So.
Well, I think we got a good kind of a overview of some projects for next year. So as you talk to people and as you think about these things, and you know things come to you in the shower or whenever, just jot them down, and it's a document that we'll continue to work on for a couple of months, and hopefully get fine-tuned here as we move along. With that being said, I don't have anything else on the agenda. So does anybody else have any?
Hey, Matt.
Go ahead, Trey.
I got two things. You guys can hear me?
Sorry, Trey, I forgot to ask if you had anything to say. Go ahead.
No trouble. We've got two things coming up. One, we're getting to the date to draw for the July 3rd fireworks boat rental. So anybody who's interested in getting into that lottery, we've got about a week and a half left. The other thing I wanted to remind everybody is for all of the slip renters on Loch Lomond, everybody's got the email asking if they want a parking pass for July 3rd, and it's about the end of that time. So anybody who has a slip and is looking for a parking pass, if you haven't seen the email, be sure to check your junk mail, your spam folder, to make sure you let them know that you're going to be coming, because once those parking passes are all given out, they're all given out. And this year, you know, parking has gotten tighter and tighter every year, and I'm sure it's going to be even tighter this year. So look for those emails and give the marina a call if you're interested in being on the lottery.
Thanks, Trey. Anything else? All right.
July 12th will be the next meeting.
July 12th is the next meeting. Okay, before we shut it down, anything else, Paul? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'd like to make a comment or two. I just wanted to say in parting that, you know, I've been a member of the community for 17 years. I was accepted on this committee in 2018, and right away I discovered we have a whole lot to learn to be a participating member of all the things that are to be done by the committee. For instance, how we relate to the Arkansas Game and Fish, how we relate to the city and even the community, and the kinds of the ways in which we, you know, have to deal with those circumstances to do our work. That was one thing I found interesting and educational. I'm fortunate to have been on this committee during a time of rapid change. You know, we really, starting in about 2018 or 19, things really requests for all kinds of changes seemed to pick up a lot, you know, particularly with regard to the wake boats, you know, and we dealt with that for almost 2 years and finally passed new wake boat rules or procedures, I think December of 2020. And so a lot of other rules were passed, like navigation and the length of boats. So those were all, in my opinion, significant changes that were made as a result of requests from the community and all. So again, I feel fortunate to have been able to have participated in that, and I feel it was a privilege and a pleasure.
Well,
Thank all y'all for your service.
Yep, we thank you for your service, and, you know, like I said, you're welcome anytime to come to a meeting and join in, so don't be a stranger.
I want to thank everybody for being included in the committee. It's been fun. I've enjoyed it, and I think we've done some good things in the last few years, like Paul mentioned, and I encourage people to get involved. So, thank you.
It's important to be involved in the community. So, okay, one more time. Anybody else? Anywhere?
Thank you for letting me participate, and I hope I can.
You did, absolutely. So, okay, I'm assuming that's it. Speak now. All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you.